bump, even from the second gen. Ladies and gentlemen, we're comparing that 2019 Subaru BRZ performance package with Spoolie Boy Turbo to this 2022 BRZ, which is mostly stock. This is Fenton's son from the Zygrene channel. This is his Subaru BRZ. I've reviewed it before, and today we're comparing it with the previous gen. I'm gonna keep this part very brief. I've already driven this car. You can see the full review over here. But in terms of mods, what he's done is the color fittings oil cooler, NK 17-inch wheels with Champiro SX2 tires, 225 all around square setup, and an AWE touring exhaust. So with that said, oh my God, this exhaust is obnoxious. Fenton daily drives this thing and tracks it. My initial concern is that if I were daily driving this level of noise would be a little bit too much for me. I feel like it would get drony on the highway. But as you guys know, I daily drive a 2013 Scion FRS. I just put my deposit in for a 2022 GR86 in Neptune Blue, which I'm very excited about. Or rather, I put my deposit in back in December. I should say I got the allocation finally for the color that I wanted. Now this second gen, as you guys know, compared to the first gen, because again, I'm very familiar with that 2013 Scion FRS, which has a few light mods, oil cooler, headers, tune, exhaust. This is obviously more similar than different, but it is noticeably different in a few key ways. Number one being the power, obviously. It's definitely much more powerful. Number two is the noise. So the fake piped-in engine noise, I really don't like. It sounds to me very artificial and sibilant. It has a harshness to the higher frequencies to my ears, but granted, I do have more sensitive ears. The shifter feel is a little smoother, not quite as notchy, and the cross shifts and cross gears is also a little bit better. I should also mention that he did upgrade the brake pads, which is why you can hear the little squealing, or screeching I should say, from time to time. I believe he's on stock suspension, and the stock suspension in the 2022 versus the first gen, they did revise the first gen every now and then, every couple of years, right? But the suspension is definitely much more compliant. It's softer. It is, in my opinion, better sorted. It is not as oversteer happy. This car does tend to understeer. Fenton did the camber bowl, so he has, you know, -1, -1.5 degrees of camber in the front, which helps with the understeer. But that first gen FRS, I will say, is very, very tail happy. It does push. It definitely pushes quite a bit before it gives way to oversteer, especially at the racetrack. But overall, I do prefer this suspension much more. And the car just feels more refined. Nice soft leather steering wheel. Interior feels a little bit less budget. It is still a budget interior. Feels a little bit more refined. Got climate control finally. I love that the exhaust has these pops and bangs. I think it's only an axle back. I'm surprised that it can do that. There you go again. Such a rewarding car to drive. When you push it a little bit, oops, hit a steering wheel button. When you push it though, it dances with you, and I love that. gauge on these cars is a bit polarizing. I think a lot of people, a lot of car enthusiasts don't like change, right? So they tend to prefer the more analog. I think they did a really good job with this digital gauge because now you have the more traditional look when you have it in regular mode. And when you go to track mode, you have this zoomed in higher resolution image, or I should say perspective, of just the higher revs. So 0 to 3,000 are all smushed down, and then you can look at, you know, the higher rev range, which you're going to be using when you're pushing it. Pops and bangs. And this platform just rotates with you so nicely. You can use the throttle mid-corner to just modulate how much you want to point that nose towards the apex, or let it track out a little bit. Having an LSD on all trims of this vehicle, both I guess the lower level of the Subaru BRZ is called Premium, the upper level is called Limited, which sounds switched, but you gotta have the LSD. Nissan, what are you thinking putting 400 plus horsepower in a sports car with an open diff at the base, right? The base trim does not have LSD. I haven't driven that car yet, but one thing I'm concerned about with a turbo is the throttle response. This car, a lot of people would complain that you need it to have a turbo from the factory. I completely disagree. You want that pure, naturally aspirated, immediate throttle response kind of experience for a car like this. Just fits the character. This is a purpose-built sports car. It's light, nimble, and all the inputs are so immediate. The steering, the gear selector, the throttle, the brakes, like everything just fits that ethos. And I'm excited for the power bump, but I am a little bit apprehensive on how it's going to change the character of a car like this. Now, let's hop in that bad boy and see how it compares. Now we're in the 2019 Subaru BRZ with Performance Package, and the owner has done a lot of modifications. So first off, and most notably, is of course the turbocharger. We have a Garrett GTX 2867 R Gen 2 Turbo, ACT clutch with upgraded flywheel, STI short shifter and upgraded pivot fork, NX suspension coilovers with SPC lower control rear arms, a Greddy Evolution GT exhaust, and 17x9 Wedsport TC105X wheels wrapped in PS4S rubber at 245 width. He's also done some nice, tasteful exterior mods like the TRD side skirts, Valenti taillights, and little other subtle things here and there. The full mod list is linked down in the description, and it is a lot. Now, with that being said, let's see how this bad boy drives. First impressions, very loud exhaust. And as soon as you start getting past 3,500 and give a little bit of throttle, you really hear that turbo spool up. The fun whooshes that we all know and love from turbocharged cars. In terms of inputs, what he's done with the transmission, the gear selector feel, is actually phenomenal. I really like it. It still maintains that notchiness, but it's extra precise, shorter throws. Going across gear still feels good. When you give it the beans, man, there's definitely a big power bump, even from the second gen. Owner told me that on a dyno, this puts around 270 to the wheels. They did a great job tuning this turbo because when you're up there in the power band, you're not noticing as much lag. I have no issues heel towing. Nice and smooth. The throttle response is a little bit laggy, very subtle when you're pushing it. Now obviously at lower revs to when you first spool it up, you have to be a little patient. But how that power just builds with quite noticeable lag at the lower revs is... Now this is a well-balanced, well-sorted car, a lot of fun. I love what he's done with the suspension as well. It's not too firm, it's not too soft, it's different than OEM obviously. It handles the bumps well, it's not getting upset by this pretty windy, pretty bumpy road. Mines road here in Livermore. Rotation mid-corner, but there's a little bit of lag, and that to me is a bit, it doesn't inspire as much confidence. With the first and second gen naturally aspirated, I feel much more comfortable pushing it and getting that mid-corner rotation. Whereas here, there's a little bit of a lag, and therefore I don't know, I can't have that millimeter precision to know how much throttle to give to get that slight rotation. I don't want to overdo it, right? Now the other thing that's very different about this car versus mine and Fenton's are the brakes. So these Brembos, they came with the performance pack, very linear. I really like that, very easy to modulate. Not as bitey as a more track-focused compound, but the owner does not track this vehicle. And as you guys may know, I've had a lot of issues with the brakes on my car with warped rotors from track days. And having something like this would be so welcome to just handle that repeated beating and increased heat from spirited track days. But for canyon carving, this is spot on as well. Now a lot of people complain that this first gen didn't have enough power, and I get that, I totally agree. However, I'm probably gonna upset some people by saying this, I feel that the turbo, this is a very well-sorted turbo as well. It loses a bit of that razor edge precision that I want from a light, nimble sports car like this. This now makes it a little bit less approachable, a little bit harder to modulate mid-corner with throttle input. The second gen, in comparison, not as powerful as this, but it's a lot better than the first gen. Between the two, in terms of just engine alone, I would go for the second gen. I think the second gen has the needed power bump so that the car feels balanced. It's no longer feeling like it's lacking. That 2022 BRZ just feels well-rounded. I think that's the best way to put it. And this car, it's a great car. Don't get me wrong, especially the other mods he's done beyond just the engine, right? I love this shifter. The shifter, I like the shifter more than the second gen, actually. This shifter is better than the 2022 BRZ, in my opinion. The suspension. I personally like PS4Ss for the street as well. And while the engine is fun, it's compensating for a limitation of the first gen. Now this has less turbo lag than a lot of other cars that I've driven, but to me it's noticeable enough that it reduces some of that driver engagement and pure NA sports car feel that I come to expect from a car like this. If you want to just mash your foot down on the throttle and take off in a straight line, it's totally going to give that to you. But if you want to dance with the car mid-corner, both on street and on track, then this car is probably going to be a little bit less approachable. One thing that I'm also surprised by is how light the steering is, because this is lighter than my 2013 Scion FRS. And it feels lighter than that 2022 BRZ as well, which is surprising because when I compared my FRS to a new GR86, the new GR86 was definitely lighter. So I'm not sure if the owner has done something or if this is just specific to this model year. Now overall, a super well sorted car. The owner did a fantastic job piecing this car together, making it feel cohesive and well sorted. But in my personal opinion, for what this car is designed for, in again my opinion and my preferences, I think that the 2022 BRZ is a little bit more razor edge. It dances with you, it inspires confidence, and for that I'm going to say that is ultimately the car that I would choose. If you do have a first gen and you want more power, the turbo is a very welcome change. It is over 100 horsepower more to the wheels. However, you do lose a little bit of that immediate throttle response and ability to dance with it at the limits and the confidence that it inspires. What do you guys think? Let me know with a comment down below. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you guys in that next one.